So welcome, thank you for joining us today. My name is Melissa Gallagher. I'm the Assistant Director at the Center for Academic Achievement. And our topic today is Woop, and we will talk about what exactly that means and what it stands for. But the idea behind it is that we don't just wish for something to change, right? But we make a plan to make it happen, and that there's kind of a really specific kind of research-based method in order to do that, developed by some psychologists out of NYU that we'll talk about today during the course of this session. So I'd like to start by hearing a little bit about what different methods, techniques, things like that that you've used for goal setting in the past, and we'll start with that reflection. And then we'll move into what is Woop, watch a really brief video kind of explaining that and talk a little bit about the science behind it and have you look at some different scenarios and figure out what students you think would be most successful based off of that science. And then we'll practice it. If we had more the other attendees who had registered, we would do some small group breakout, but if not, I'll make sure you have some time to practice it on your own and also get some feedback. And then we'll kind of recap and make sure you have an action plan if there are specific wishes that you have in mind for the spring semester. So that's kind of our timeline and what we're looking to accomplish today. So as part of that reflection, like I mentioned, what have you done in the past in terms of thinking about a wish that you have, a goal that you have? What did that look like in terms of thinking about it and then actually executing and making that happen? What were things that have worked well for you with that in the past, and what have been some struggles when it has come to wishes and then getting the outcomes you want out of them?
So like in my last semester, I did kind of like at first I kind of started like adapting like online classes. It's kind
Yeah.
of like a hard, but as the weeks goes on, I understand like how it's going to work each and every week.
Okay. So over time, you were able to kind of figure out what kind of system and process and routine made sense for you with regards to that. Okay, so that's good that you used that feedback to help you adjust. So again, people have different experiences with what has worked and what has not worked. And I want us to also not just think about academic goals as we go through this session, because academic goals are one area that research has shown that Woop can be successful, but it's also been shown in a number of different disciplines as well. And so again, you might have some goals this semester separate from your courses that you want to consider and address, and this system can be one way that you can do that. So to start, I want to kind of look at these three scenarios, and this material and the video that we'll watch are courtesy of the Character Lab, which is kind of out of the University of Pennsylvania. So 3 high school sophomores, again, this is kind of their provided example, but you can think about this with college students too, want to make the honor roll this quarter, but their English grades are too low. Read what each student is thinking and consider who is most likely to make honor roll. So this is what student A thinks. I wanted to make honor roll since my freshman year, and finally earning it is going to be so great. Some of my friends think I can't do it, but I know that I can get my grade up and hit my goal if I just keep reminding myself of how much I want to do this. So that's kind of student A's thought process related to this goal. Student B says, I'd really like to make honor roll, and I know that means getting my English grade up. I really want to send good grades to colleges in a few years, but sometimes I waste time on my phone. Maybe I should put my phone away for just a little studying time every night. And then student C is thinking, I know I have a low grade in English because I'm not reading every night. I just end up on my phone after school. I don't even know if I can get my grade up. Making honor roll would be great, but it might not be possible this quarter. So looking at these 3 students and this goal that they have of making the honor roll, this wish that they have, which student do you think is most likely to fulfill that wish and why?
I would say student A,
Okay, why is that?
because like when I look at B and C, like student B is mostly on his phone instead of thinking making a huddle, and student C is like like he has to like he or she probably have a low grade and he doesn't know if he able to make a grade up. Well, compared to A, like if you're you need he knows that there's people that dubbing he or she ability, but that if that person could hit the goal, then he could get the honor.
Okay. Okay. What if you knew that student A was also on their phone some? Would that change, or would you say no, still I think pretty well that they have articulated in a way that I think they can actually go after and get that goal?
It could change.
Okay. Okay. So often students react by thinking that student A is the most likely one who's going to accomplish their goal. So I want to look a little bit closer now at Woop and then kind of come back to these scenarios to think through a little bit based off of that science and that kind of structure, which one you think would be most successful, or if your answer stays the same. So I'm going to hopefully have the tech cooperate with me. I know I'm going to have to, I think, share my audio. I'm going to share the computer audio. So let me know if you can hear it once it gets started. Maybe just thumbs up once it.
We're often told, think positive. But research shows that just dreaming about a positive future doesn't work. The more that students positively imagined getting better grades, the less they improved. The more they imagined starting a relationship, the less they actually began one. The more that people just envisioned healthy eating, the less well they ate. Woop is a method to help us fulfill our wishes. We specify a wish, identify and imagine the best outcome, identify and imagine the critical obstacle in ourselves, and form a plan. Woop has been proven to help people get better grades, improve their relationships, and be healthy. What holds you back from fulfilling your wish? Learn more about character development at characterlab.org.
So that's kind of an overview of what the steps are. And I'm going to kind of take a minute to kind of talk through what those steps are a little bit. Again, this research comes out of Gabrielle Ottingen from NYU. And this is kind of one of her books that she had that really distilled a lot of the research that she and some of her co-researchers did. And her kind of look at this is rethinking positive thinking, because a lot of her research showed that only thinking positively about something didn't actually long-term lead to the results that people wanted. And she found a couple of reasons for this. One of them is often sometimes that if we just envision the positive outcome and kind of like think about that kind of fantasy there, that sometimes that really relaxes people and it doesn't really motivate them to actually kind of lay out specific steps when they hit obstacles, which we do commonly. Often it makes people feel like they've already accomplished it in some way. And so like they don't put in the effort to actually do that in their real lives. And so she spends a lot of time in her research talking about this idea and this term that she coins mental contrasting, that we contrast this wish, this positive kind of desire with the obstacle, the reality that's preventing us from achieving it. And we kind of almost unconsciously start to associate those two, so that when we think about the wish or when we encounter the obstacle, we're kind of reminded of what we need to do. And we have a plan specifically, like when I'm in this situation, then I do this, that can help us actually accomplish it. So that's kind of the outline there. So in order for Woop to be successful, we need to start with the wish, right? And it needs to be specific. It needs to have some kind of time frame. Maybe it's a day, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month. And so we have a time frame in mind that we want to accomplish it for. And it needs to be challenging, but it also needs to be feasible. This method doesn't work if we have a goal that's really completely out of our reach, maybe at this present moment. And for her, one of the values that she discusses in this book is the fact that we can sometimes use Woop to help us realize where we really want and need to spend our energy. So maybe we realize, okay, this wish maybe isn't an appropriate one for me right now. I want to shift my efforts to something else that's a wish that is both maybe challenging, but also attainable at the same time. And so Woop works better when you feel like you can actually accomplish the goal that you're setting out to do. And again, it can still be challenging, but there needs to be that level of it's actually an attainable goal. With the outcome, and again, we'll practice this, it needs to be a fulfilling outcome. It needs to be a motivating outcome. We want you to really spend some time, like closing your eyes if you want, writing it out, whatever format you want. We kind of go through this in a few minutes. You can pick for yourself, but you want to be really clearly able to visualize it. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it, that you can really have that imagery behind it. And that ultimately we can kind of reduce it down to the most crucial parts. And again, that's kind of part of the template we'll look at in a minute, and that'll also email you afterwards. And then we have to think about the obstacle. This is the part that sometimes people don't want to confront or think about, but it's our reality and something we need to address in order to do that mental contrasting of contrasting the wish with and the outcome with the obstacle. So For this technique, we really want to think about inner obstacles, not outer obstacles. So there are outer obstacles we all face, whether it's things related to, maybe finances or resources or other things specific to our goal. But for this kind of technique, we really want to think about what those inner obstacles are. I'm worried that if I do this, that fill in the blank. I'm concerned about this. I tend to be lazy and procrastinate about this, right? That we kind of identify what those obstacles are. I'm easily distracted by this. So what are those inner obstacles, not an outside barrier, that we're trying to attack when we're thinking through this plan? And again, we want to clearly visualize those too, like be specific, like what does that really look like and feel like, so that you can then ultimately reduce it down to the most important parts. And then we want to have that plan thinking about that obstacle. And we really want to have this format of when this happens, then I do this. So that when that kind of that trigger, that obstacle that we encounter, which we know we're going to encounter, happens, we kind of already have a plan associated with it. When this, then this. And we want to make sure that it's an observable action, not like an inner debate. So when I finish dinner, I'm going to sit down and review my notes from the previous day. Like I can see you doing that. That's something tangible. It's not like I'm going to, just think about this. It's something specific that someone could actually see and measure. And that you have all the resources and skills that you need to do that, right? So that it's a realistic plan that you can do, so that ultimately you can accomplish your goal. So some of the questions you might ask is, how would it feel when you accomplish this, when you're thinking about that outcome? The obstacle, what are those internal outcomes that you have? And then again, what's the specific plan? And we want it to be easy, right? This is not to get overly complicated. We want it to be something easy. When this happens, then I do this. So thinking about this kind of method, again, based on her research, and she did research in lots of different domains. Most of the book is spent actually talking about all the different research she did, both in the United States, a lot in Germany too, and with a variety of different populations, including college students as one of them. When we go back and look at those 3 students from earlier, which one of them do you think is most likely to be successful based off of Woop and based kind of off that structure of wish, outcome, obstacle, plan?
Based on Woop, I would say now it will be student, because I'm debating between B and C now.
Okay, and why is that?
Because A is like, because he wished, no, because he wished that like he could prove the person who wants to prove the plans, he could do it, but he sometimes there's going to be an obstacle in the way that
Mm-hmm.
preventing that person to get the honor.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I would say B is probably the most closest, especially because there's a specific plan when that obstacle comes in. I think that's a difference between B and C, is that student B is saying, okay, I waste time on my phone, so maybe I should put it away to study every night. So that act of putting it away every night when it's nighttime, I'm going to put my phone away, so that I can actually sit down and study some. Um, the kind of the plan for student A is a little kind of too vague. It's not really specific. If I just keep reminding myself, well, it kind of, again, what's that trigger of when this happens, then I do this, right? And again, that's more of just a mental thing. It's not a specific action. And student C is almost, it's kind of, I think, just fully thinking about the obstacle. Like, maybe I can't even do this, right? There's not this like, okay, what am I going to do in order to keep working? And doesn't really have a vision for what that outcome might look like, right? Student A knows, okay, I want to send grades to colleges in a few years. Like I have some kind of vision of where this is going, what I want to do. So the Woop research would suggest that student B, again, because they both have that obstacle that you mentioned and also have some kind of plan for how they're going to deal with it, probably would, from their research, end up being the student being the most successful. And again, I think that's counterintuitive sometimes, because I think people always think about just be positive, and we have a lot of positive quotes in our office. But we also really want to make sure students have plans, and that they're realistic with what they're encountering as an obstacle and can make a plan around that. Other thoughts about Woop in general or about this scenario?
No, not at all.
Okay. Does that make sense, kind of that framework of where that's coming from?
Yeah.
And the research really says that, again, when you mentally contrast, when you have that wish and that outcome, that really almost have this non-conscious signal that kind of gets triggered in you because you're always associating those two. And in their research, the order of these steps actually really matters. They did a number of studies where they flipped it, where they had people think about the obstacles first and then move into the wishes. But from their research, that didn't seem to make nearly as big of an impact of really thinking about the wish and the outcome first, what you want, and then looking at the obstacle and then making the plan. So again, the specific sequence of steps in their research tended to show that this was best. So they both tested kind of the idea of mental contrasting first, and then they devised this kind of system and did testing on that as well. So here's an example, kind of with, again, a kind of more of an academic student-based example to kind of lay out these steps a little bit. Kind of move us and zoom here. So again, what is that wish? Challenging but feasible. And again, can you kind of be really specific and distill it down to, a couple words here to really say? So I want to get an A in the bio quiz. And then what's the outcome? Like, if you do this, how will you feel? And again, we want to take some time to really think and visualize what that might look like. And we can ultimately, in this case, distill it to, I'll feel proud. When I get that A or see it on campus, I'm going to feel proud. And that's what I want. And then really thinking about what's the obstacle. And this is a very common obstacle I see with students and myself. The obstacle is I procrastinate, right? That's an internal obstacle, right? It's not like I don't have the bio book, something like that, kind of maybe outside of you. And then ultimately, then what's the plan? So again, this when then. So when I finish dinner, then I'm going to make some flashcards, right? And I can do that, right? I have the flashcards, I have my notes. It's something that we can see them do. It's not just, again, an internal thought process. It's something tangible. And again, this kind of comes right from the character lab, and I'll send the link to this. But this is what I want to spend a moment for you. And again, feel free to, if you have something to write with, or if you have your computer open and want to open up a blank Word doc, you're welcome to do that. But I want you to think through the same thing. And again, it doesn't have to be academic necessarily. And you also don't have to share with me specifically if you want, or if you'd rather stop the recording and then share, we can do that too. Because the research, again, was in a variety of different domains, including personal relationships, health domains, things like that. So let's take some time now and really kind of think through this process. And I don't want to rush it. So I don't want to give us, a good maybe 10 minutes to have you really work through this process. And I'll actually pause the recording right now while we have you do that. So to recap, think about especially what those when-thens are. And maybe for you or other students, some of those when this happens, then I'll do this might involve other people, resources, offices on campus, right? So if it, especially even if it's not an academic goal, we have lots of other kinds of organizations and resources that maybe now that we begin this semester can be kind of tools for you as part of that action plan that you're creating for yourself. So maybe it is when I start feeling stress, I want to make sure that I kind of put a note in my planner that I want to go to the Wellness Wednesdays that they have online and engage with our students and learn some strategies to help me out there. Or after each class or every Monday, I want to make sure that I, sign up for writing tutoring to make sure I have that resource built in if your wish is around maybe doing well in a certain writing intensive course. So think about your resources on campus and again, how you might incorporate them into some of your when-then plans as they're appropriate for some of what you want to accomplish. And the other thing I would say is feel free to share these with others too, if you feel like that helps build in some accountability for you or makes it easier for you to kind of track what you've actually done. So again, that's where we want to be thinking about, are there other people and places that you can really interact with as part of that really visible plan in the last step of the process. So the other thing that Dr. Ottingen talks about in her book is that this is a practice, right? The first time you do it, maybe it's not going to work perfectly, or maybe you realize I need to articulate my wish better, or my plan for my obstacles better, or maybe I realize my initial wish is not really my wish and my focus, and I want to refocus my energies on something else. That's a natural part of the process. Sometimes she says students or people minimize the progress they make using this. So that's where, again, tracking your goals and tracking what you accomplish can would be helpful to help you seeing the value in using a tool like this potentially. So like I said, my name is Melissa Gallagher. I'm happy at any point in time, if you do have something specific here and want to, in a couple weeks, sit down and chat a little bit about your goal and what you did. If you're a first year student, you could also connect with your student success coach at the beginning of the semester if you want to articulate to them some of what your goals are, wishes around this in your plan, and have someone that you can kind of check in with on that. That's kind of a part of their role on campus too. And then if it is something more academic with academic skills related, all the tutoring at the center can be an option, including our peer academic coaches who are fellow students who talk with other students about time management, organization, reading strategies, study strategies, note-taking, things of that nature. So they'll have appointments starting later next week for the second week of the semester. All of our tutoring will start the second week of the semester. But if you think any of those resources might be helpful as part of your action plan, I definitely would encourage you to sign up for that. So thank you for attending today. I